Welcome to the Radiant Mission Podcast. We are on a mission to encourage and inspire other believers as they navigate through their life and through their relationship with Christ. We are a faith-based podcast, so we're approaching all issues from a biblical lens. If you've been listening along, we hope you've enjoyed the journey so far. Today, we have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Lea Peterson. She is a photographer, a writer, a podcaster herself. She's going to be sharing her very real and raw journey with us. And as she and her husband navigated marriage, trying to conceive, and life in general. And just a little fun fact, Lea and I connected after I'd shared our birth story on the Healing Birth podcast. I just love how that is how we connected and what connected us. So Lea, thank you so much for being here with us for today and for your willingness to share your story and your life with us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, very exciting. So we really want to start off. We'd love it if you could just start by sharing what inspired you to share your story today.
I mean, Rebecca, your birth story honestly really inspired me because I felt like there was a level of vulnerability and honesty with portions of your story that just to be publicly honest with certain things, it's scary, but that's how you help people. If we kept everything to ourselves, how would that help anyone?
That's a good point. That is a good point. It can be
Yes.
very difficult to share things, especially the personal stuff, because we
Yeah,
fear judgment. And I almost sometimes feel that it can even be easier sometimes to share with people that you don't know than people that are even in your close spheres, because
yeah,
we're worried most about judgment from those closest to us.
yep.
I don't know if you've encountered that at all.
Yeah, I don't really struggle with what are people going to think of me? It's not really like a life struggle of mine
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
worry about what people think of me,
Hmm.
but I do kind of think, "Oh, what will they assume without knowing like the full story?" So
Sure.
people are
Yeah.
going to assume certain things with my story without, because I'm going to go deep today, but you know, an hour when it's been 7, 8 years, you
Yeah.
can only go so far. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's more so maybe being misunderstood.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a great way to put it. I know that fertility in general is a huge topic, and I don't want to get into even statistics or things like that because you know that I am not necessarily the biggest believer in medical statistics because they're so
yeah,
skewed. It's only people that are reporting these things to medical facilities, and a lot of us aren't reporting what's going on with us to anybody,
exactly.
so we can't even necessarily speak to that. But I know that I personally have many girlfriends that are struggling with fertility related type of issues. I've got my sister sitting here today. She is one of them as well, that she may share a little bit during this or afterwards. And Lea, obviously this is something that's been a journey for you. So can you walk us through these last 7 years in an hour?
Yes, 7, 8ish.
Mm,
I don't really know, you know, the specific date, but it's been a really long time,
mhm,
longer than a lot of people.
mhm.
But the one and only dream, like my connection with spirit, with God, with my own soul, with intuition, kind of has always been strong. Sometimes I just put it on the back burner because it might be scary.
Mhm.
But my one and only dream that I've had that was so pivotal in this whole journey was in the first few months that we started trying, I think. And I had a dream of a baby. And I was in the church I grew up in, which I'm not quite sure the significance of that. Maybe
Mm.
just because everyone had 10 kids in that church. Like, I don't know what that was.
Okay.
But I'm holding a baby in this church I grew up in the church. I'm holding this baby. And I'm staring at the baby. And I'm
How
like,
old is this baby?
Oh, a newborn, like a
Okay.
few months old maybe.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm holding this baby and I'm like, you are so beautiful. Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. And then the baby says back to me, you are so beautiful. And I'm like, oh. And then it says, and then I say, you are such a miracle. These are all the things we think and say to babies. You are so beautiful. You are such a little miracle. And when I said, you are such a miracle, the baby said back to me, you are a miracle.
Wow.
And then I'm like, okay. And it might have said like one other word. I was like, beautiful, miracle. And when I woke up from that dream, I knew it was significant. I knew it was special. And when I look back that 7, 8 years, that has been my journey. Is I originally wanted a baby to fulfill my dreams, to fulfill my happiness, to make me happy, to, give all my love to something else. But my journey has been seeing that I am the miracle. I am beautiful. My mom looked at me that way when I was a baby, and hopefully she still does today.
Mhm.
But that's how we look at other souls.
Mm.
And the journey, by and far, of my entire journey is recognizing that that is me, because I am a child of God, just like the future baby I hope to have.
Mhm.
I am on the same level. We put these babies on pedestals. And then what about us?
Yeah. I love that. I really connect with that in like my own struggle as well, of a realization that I absolutely feel the Lord has brought me to, of um like it's like a roller coaster of up and down days when what you thought your life would be or a dream that you had isn't happening, and the Lord revealed something very similar to what you just said, of like I a few years ago got some health information about my body, and it's like I'm just like the enemy came for me, like I'm dysfunctional, like I am not working properly. My children I do have were complete miracles. And then I was driving my car home from the doctor, and then I felt the Lord impress on my heart, you are a miracle. He said that to me too, that your
Mm.
body is a miracle.
Yeah.
Every function of our bodies and the way that they, especially like our hormone health and our immune systems and our whole health, like God made our bodies perfectly. He made them
Mhm.
fearfully and wonderfully. And every day is a miracle. And so that's so powerful that he gave you that dream, and
Mm.
he speaks to us in dreams like that
Mhm.
sometimes, and it's so beautiful. And you are beautiful, and you are a miracle.
Yes.
And to receive that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I have this friend, this really close friend of mine who I've told that story to, and it really impacted her. And she has this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little boy that's about a year old. And whenever she's in public, this baby boy like captures attention. And when they say, "Oh, you are just a joy," she says, "And he thinks you are a joy."
Oh,
Oh,
Uh huh.
that's very sweet.
Yeah. And it changes them.
Mm.
And
That's a
she,
yeah.
great way
yeah.
to look at it. It was such a great perspective.
Yeah, so she took my dream even further and
Yeah.
just spread so much joy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
That's amazing.
amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
There it sounds, and from what we've talked about, Leah, there's just so many spiritual components to this for you that have kind of guided you through this journey. Obviously, there has been a lot of waiting and a lot of trust and a lot of patience that you've also had to experience and learn
Hmm.
from the Lord during this. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think that is the biggest component to this journey. And the mainstream perspective in fertility, that's in quotes because I know I'm fertile. Like I track my fertile signs every month,
Mhm.
and I've done basic testing to know like there's nothing wrong with me and there's nothing wrong with my husband.
Mhm.
We've done basic testing through the years, just to cover bases, and it always confirmed my intuition that nothing's wrong.
Mhm.
Everything has always confirmed that nothing's wrong. It's just timing.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think the spiritual and emotional components are at the forefront, but mainstream infertility perspective is just on the body alone,
Mhm.
which is such a disservice.
Mm.
Because the minute you cannot get pregnant, it's the minute you aren't getting what you want in the minute you want it.
Mhm.
And who do
Mhm.
you become?
Mm.
Do you become a little toddler that's like, I'm not getting what I want? And that reveals where your growth is.
Mm.
So
Absolutely.
the victimhood of infertility is what I'm so passionate about, because in our mainstream perspective of infertility, it's poor me. I am a victim to my body. And survivor mentality is, how is this for me? And how is this for my growth and for my benefit? Because there's two ways to look at life: is poor me. Why is God doing this to me? Why is
Mhm.
my body doing this to me? Versus everything is for me.
Mm.
And God is doing this for me. And it takes a
Yeah.
long time to actually embody that,
Mhm.
because you can know it at a logical level and be like,
Mhm.
oh, that sounds good.
Mhm.
But it's a different experience when you actually embody it. And that's what's taken years.
That's what I was gonna ask
Years.
you is how long did it take to come to that realization? Because 'Cause I'm sure it's not a couple of months and then you're like, "Oh,
Mm-mm.
I get it."
No, and I'm actually like 8 years in, actually doing leaps and bounds forward compared to years ago.
Mhm.
So I feel like I'm growing at exponential rates just now, which
Mhm.
is why maybe my journey has to be so long.
Mhm.
But honestly, one of the biggest pivotal moment for me is this story when it was maybe 7-ish years ago. My husband and I were in Hawaii, and we were walking the beach, and this was in the first year or two of trying to get pregnant, and I was in suffering. I was, poor me. My
Mm.
life is so horrible. I'm not getting what I want. Everyone else has what I want. Their
Mm.
life is so great. Their life is so grand, and mine is shitty. I don't have this thing. God, poor me, poor me. Why are you doing this to me? Victimhood. I was in so much suffering. We were walking a beach in Hawaii, and I'm seeing all these babies and these pregnant bellies. And I'm like, why can't I have that? Why can't I have that? And then my husband reaches, I didn't say anything. He just intuitively reached his hand over to mine to grab my hand. And I flicked it away. He was extending love, and I rejected it because of
Mm.
how I was feeling inside.
Mm.
That we treat people the way we feel inside. So I
Mhm.
was feeling so horrible inside. So I rejected his love. And then I'm like, what was that? Then we move on where I'm in the grocery store of Whole Foods just like 30 minutes later. And I'm like, wow, God, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I'm done suffering. I'm giving this up. I'm giving this up. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to feel this way anymore. And then within 1 week, my marriage literally breaks. We break apart.
Mm.
We break apart for months. And the moment I did not have my husband anymore was the moment that a baby was the last thing on my list.
Mm.
And I couldn't even believe that. It was like a week prior that I was like, God, I don't want this feeling in my body anymore.
Mhm.
And then it was gone.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it put things into a real perspective for you.
exactly. And I feel fortunate to have had that perspective shift, even though that was the darkest moment of my life. And I've lost my dad when I was 13. So I've had that trauma. But losing my husband and that grief was just as dark. And it was so dark. It was so full of grief. But it shifted my perspective to being like, oh my God, I had the one thing all along. I had my husband.
Mhm.
And then the minute I lost him was the minute I wanted him back. And I didn't care about a baby anymore.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I feel fortunate to have had that perspective shift. I don't think that needs to be your life. I don't think you need to live that out to gain that new perspective. I think
Mhm.
sometimes we might just be stubborn and need the rug pulled out to do that mind shift, but we
Mhm.
don't have to have it,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But that was the life changing moment for me that has always um, changed how I view my situation.
Yeah.
Because what is the point of having a baby if your marriage is not rock solid?
Sure. Yeah.
Then you
I
have
ha-
a baby and then your marriage breaks.
yeah. Yeah. I have a question for you about your husband actually. How was it for him going through all of this? And how has it been? At that time in the beginning when you guys were going through I'm sure
Yeah.
it was months of you take a test and negative test, or, you know, your time would come. How was it for him? How did he respond to you during that? And then after you guys reconciled, how was that conversation? How did things go with baby talk?
Yeah, I'm happy you asked that because a big piece of it was that I was kind of leading the way of what I wanted for my life in that time,
Mm,
like 7 years ago.
mm,
He wasn't he wasn't voicing his wants and needs in life as much
mhm,
as me.
mhm.
So he was kind of just kind of trying to please me
Okay.
instead of stepping up and being like, "Hey, I'm not ready for this." Like
Interesting.
you're kind of like pressuring me into something I don't personally feel ready for. And so that was a huge dynamic of our marriage was that I was using my voice too much and
Mhm.
he wasn't using his enough. And
Okay.
so it was such an imbalance, which is why obviously our marriage breaking was the biggest blessing because we completely broke apart and then eventually reconciled months later and had to go to therapy to understand our dynamics and why things happened the way they
Mhm,
happened.
mhm.
Yeah. So what he learned through all of it was that he needs to use his voice and he's more so of a
Okay.
people pleaser and I'm more so of a go getter and pusher and pressure and
Mhm.
and that serves its purpose and sometimes but you can't
Yeah.
have a marriage that way.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
totally understand that. I'm very much like you.
Yeah.
Very much gotta go, next thing, let's get things
Yeah.
done. And sometimes we steamroll other people
Mhm.
because of our attitudes in that way. But like you said, it serves a purpose too. I think that it is a gift that the Lord gives us, but we have to learn how to taper it in our
Yes.
relationships, especially in our marriages, which I'm actually reading the book Love and Respect right now. I don't know if you've ever read that book. I started it years
Mm.
ago and I made it 50 pages in, and I felt like I got the idea of it, but I didn't get the idea of it because I didn't practice any of it.
Yeah.
But it's my biggest challenge in marriage is learning how to be respectful towards my husband and allowing him to have a voice and not just being a mom to him and
Yep.
no, this is how it's going to be, I'm going to make the plan type of thing. It's my own struggle, and learning how to step back or to change my tone, or as this author suggests, also change your facial expressions, which is very hard to do when when someone
Yeah.
is not doing what we want them to do. It can be a difficult thing. So I'm curious now, is he ready, or did he become ready over the years, or is that too sensitive of a question for me to ask? I'm not sure.
No, it's not too sensitive, but what I what I how I look at it is we each have our own journeys and so much of my life lessons are in this preconception journey
Mhm,
and his aren't because that is just a woman's path because they say things like the woman is the one pregnant and she feels the connection to the baby and the man basically becomes a dad the day the baby is born.
mm,
The woman's journey is this full lead up typically and
mhm,
and the man really steps up and steps in the day the baby's born. Like their path and what they need to do is so different than a woman's, because a huge part of my journey also is finding, like I always said I wanted a home birth ever since I was a teenager, but only in the past year or two I've found free birth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm obsessed with free birth, and I needed to find free birth and, taking radical responsibility for your own birth.
Mm-hmm.
And he's supportive, but his path is just so different than mine. He's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be giving birth.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's
Sure.
me.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
me and my connection with my body that will be giving birth. It's not him and his body.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a piece in this for sure. But it's just our paths are just so different as well.
Mm-hmm. I love that you've become passionate about free birth. I love that. I love free birth. That's great. And I do see that there is tremendous opportunity for husbands and wives to come together when you're going through a free birth experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though I just watched this birth the couple days ago, that was crazy. This not crazy, crazy and I mean crazy cool. She wanted to have everybody hands off. She just wanted to be left alone. She actually had a midwife. I don't know if you saw this one. If you guys, I think I sent it to Rachel. And so she's just in the birth pool. She had set up her camera on a tripod, I guess. And she's just birthing the baby. Nobody's around. You can hear someone in the background like gathering trash from the trash can or something. And the baby's head comes out. And then the baby comes out and she lifts the baby up. And she very calmly just goes, "The baby's here." And it was just one of those, it was so cool that it was so casual. It was just such a beautiful
Yeah.
moment. And so it doesn't have to be, your partner doesn't have to be the one that is, holding you through it necessarily. But I'm sure from our story, from Mike and I's story, that for us, that was what was important after experiencing the trauma that we did from our first and having that traumatic C-section that we both went through. Going through it together with the Lord was our healing from our first trauma. And so it's kind of to say, I see the beauty in having a husband be a part of that. But I also get that our society has not trained or coached husbands or men to do this. It hasn't even trained women to do this. Birth is, I mean, we are programmed to think that birth is something totally different than it really is. And I'm just so excited and happy that you have seen the truth about birth before having a baby and not learning about it after going through something traumatic and then going, "Oh, wait a second." You're already leaps and bounds ahead. And so I think that's awesome that that's something that the Lord has revealed to you through this time is, hey, look at your body. It is a miracle. And look what it will be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
All by you can do this with me and with, put your faith in me and let's get through this. We can get this done. I think that's just so beautiful.
And
Absolutely.
I think it kind of goes hand in hand. Like I'm not reaching for science to save me from my own body to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why free birth resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
I
I
don't want the medical system to save me
yeah,
unless maybe it was death on the line.
sure. And of course, it's always good to learn. I think that that was what the Lord led us down and on our
Mhm.
own personal journey was learn. What do you need to look for emergency situations and stuff? Be prepared. It's always good to be prepared, but that doesn't mean that that is what's going to happen. I wanted to touch on something you said earlier about there's nothing wrong with me, was what you said. You were like, I had tests done. There's nothing wrong with me. Isn't it interesting how we have been programmed almost to think that when we don't get pregnant or something happens, that there's something wrong with us,
Yep.
that it just means, oh, there's nothing wrong. It is such an interesting thing in this whole medical sphere of birth and conception, this idea of something being wrong, because it happens with fertility, but then it also happens during pregnancy too, is you are seen as a pathology. You're seen as this diseased, you are with child, you are treated as if you're this diseased person when it couldn't be further from the truth. So it's just an interesting thing. I mean, Rachel, I don't know if you want to touch on that too, because I think you've probably been through that with some of these doctors. Oh, let's see if there's something wrong.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's kind of disturbing being entrenched in like the medical system of birth and fertility as they approach everything like you are a patient with a problem. Like for me, I did not have an issue getting pregnant with my first son. But very early on he was breech. And because I was a first time mom and I hadn't researched anything at all, and I also had dreamed of having like a home water birth since I was in high school. I used to watch that show, The Baby Story.
Yes, me
I'd
too.
literally watch it after I got home from school. My mom would be like, "What is wrong with you? Why are you watching this?" I was obsessed with birth. Rebecca, remember when I always used to make all of my Barbies pregnant?
Yeah, you were water birth was your thing. And
Yes.
I just thought it was so interesting. I was not interested in that at all. And then to then go through that later on was totally flipped,
Yeah, absolutely. So then like fast forward to real adulthood in the real world and being ignorant. Like that's what it was, is I was ignorant and uneducated and living in California, which is a highly medicalized state. Um so my son was breech and they were said that the only option is to attempt an external version to flip him, and if he doesn't flip, then we were going to have to schedule a C-section. And I remember talking about it in like a mommy group on Facebook, but even groups like that were different than they are today. Like there wasn't as much education on social media in 2014 or 2015 as there is today. And one person said to me when I like shared what I was going through, like, I'm trying to figure out how to flip my baby. I don't know what to do. And one person's like, find a different doctor. Someone said that. Someone who's willing to deliver breech. And I was just so entrenched in the system. Like, I don't know how to do that. Like, what am I supposed to do? This is my doctor. Like, I like my doctor or whatever. And I just look back on my past self and think, oh, you poor girl.
Yeah.
And so I ended up being treated like I had a medical condition just because I had a baby that was head up. And I had a C-section and was also like made like it was an emergency situation just because my blood pressure was slightly elevated. And it was just like the whole thing is like a trap. That's what it feels like. And so now, almost 7 years later, I also have, struggled to not get pregnant. And it's been 2 years now of us trying. And it's very confusing because it wasn't an issue I had before. And now I do. And I saw a fertility OBGYN a few years ago. And he also confirmed like I'm ovulating. Everything's doing what it's supposed to do. And his option was to put me on a medication to make me ovulate. And I'm like, on Clomid. And I'm like, well, now I'm a different person than I was 7 years ago. So now I'm like awake to the medical system. And I'm like, well, why do I need to be on a drug to make me ovulate when you just confirmed that I ovulate? And he's like, well, then we can, make it happen exactly when we want to. And I know it's the Holy Spirit inside me just screamed, no, we're not doing that. And I've had a completely revival of my faith in this past 7 years. It's interesting. Both you and I are on this like 8 year, because it's been the same for me. Obviously our paths are different, but I just had that realization of I'm not going to do this medically. the Lord has a different plan for me. And even if it's kind of the story that really resonates with me from the Bible, there's countless, or maybe not countless, but there is many, many women mentioned in the Bible who struggle with fertility and the Lord giving them a baby, or sometimes not. But I really felt like the story from the Bible that resonates with me is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they are being told, you need to do this, bow to a false god, or you're going to be thrown into the fire. And they refuse to do what the world is telling them to do and say, the Lord will deliver us. But even if he doesn't, that to me is key. But even if he doesn't, we still will put our faith in him. And that, when I kind of made that realization on this entire medical awakening of what is really happening around us and what I have been victim to essentially in the medical system, that I realized I'm going to put my faith in the Lord. And even if the outcome isn't what I think it will be or I want it to be, he is still faithful and he is still good. And, he will deliver us in the end, because our goal here on earth is not to be mothers. It's not to be wives. It's not to be citizens of the United States. Our goal here on earth is to be a child of the kingdom of God. Our goal is to prepare us for his kingdom, not living for this one.
I want to add to that, because you made the point of, even if we don't get the outcome we want. And it's taken me 7-8 years to fully understand that. This May, I had the biggest aha moment I've ever had in this journey with that concept, where I discovered that there is a difference between an expectation and a hope. And I, for 7-8 years, have been expecting to be a mother and expecting to be pregnant. I expect to be pregnant at some point in my life. And that's not a bad thing, because, it's the female human experience. But what the difference between an expectation and hope is control. And when you say, oh, I hope I will get pregnant, that feels different. And everything comes down to the feeling in the body. That's it. I hope to get pregnant versus I expect to be pregnant. That changed everything for me. So then I realized, oh, I have been trusting God with the expectation that I will get what I want at some point in the future, even if it's 10 years down the road. I act like I trust God, I'm trusting God, I'm surrendering, I'm trusting God. But all along, I said, because I know I'll get pregnant in the future. And then I had to be real and radically honest that, can I trust God if I never get what I want? Can I trust God if I never get pregnant? And I had to really move through that. And I kind of still am, because there's a part of me that's just like, that's just a cruel joke then. But that's what trust is. Trust isn't, oh, I'll trust you with knowing I'll get what I want. It's literally the opposite. It's trusting you even if I never get what I want.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And logically knowing that and then embodying it and living it is different.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to really face, the reality that I might never get what I want. And it's taken me years to face that, because I was like basking in the light of like, look at this blessing God has blessed me in, and this blessing and this blessing and this blessing, instead of the reality of, can I still trust God if I don't get what I want? And then it led me to, okay, so if I'm going to fully surrender this, I thought I surrendered it years ago. I thought I did. I don't think I did. If I surrender it now, what does that look like? What's the action of surrender? People say, give it to God, let it go, surrender. But what is that action on a daily habit?
Mhm.
What is the mind behavior of surrender? What is the body behavior? What's the behavior of surrender? Like the literal.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been questioning myself on. And I don't have an answer, but the only thing I can get to is it's a feeling in the body, and it's a mind shift. It's like it's just suffering of not getting what you want versus the switch and the feeling of peace, of
Yeah.
I'll be okay if I don't get what I want. And that's it. To me, it's just a feeling in my
Yeah.
body and a perspective shift.
It's
So
that
that's what I've
feeling.
been moving through.
Yeah. It's that feeling of giving it up in in the deepest of places in some ways, of truly feeling I give up this thing that I want, I give it to you. I don't have an example that's as deep as fertility, but I very much, when Mike and I were both working in New York City, I needed to get out of there for for many a reason. And it took years of prayer and praying for the Lord to move us to the next stage of life. But I also wasn't necessarily walking in faith with him during that time. I was very wishy-washy about that. I was like, "All right, can you help me out here?" And so it took years of getting to the point of complete surrender where I said, "Lord, show me the way. I have no clue what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I'm lost. Show me the way." And then he started to open doors and pathways. And again, that's not as deep of an example because it doesn't hinge on our deepest of emotions. But Rachel, I look like you wanted to jump in as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, not only do I know that exact feeling of that like heart posture, and I feel like I had a very similar paradigm shift with this scripture: "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." And that is one of the most misinterpreted verses, I think, in the Bible, because people often say that like He's going to give you what you want.
Yeah.
And what shifted me is finding my delight in the Lord, and He puts His desires in my heart, of that feeling you're talking about where you go from pain to peace over something. And that's what I started working on. Is I was in so much pain of not getting what I wanted. And what I realized is that it was idolatry, is that the desire for another baby was on a pedestal in my heart over God. And like you said, it becomes like almost conditional. Like when that expectation thing that you said, that when you give me what I want, that eventually it's going to happen. And it almost feels like you're like then treating God like, if you say the right thing and do the right thing and you unlock your blessings or whatever. But in reality, we it's not up to us. We have no control over it. And I know, even being a mother to the two children that I have has taught me that lesson, as well as struggling to get pregnant, that we ultimately don't have control. So all I can do is, and this is how my prayer has shifted, is I've actually stopped praying, for the most part, asking for another child like I used to, beg and plead, let it be this time, like, in my cycle. And now I've shifted that paradigm of, put your desire in my heart, whatever it is that you like, because He sees our end from our beginning. He knows what our future is going to be. He knows the children that we will have, or possibly not, or what we'll do with our life, or how we'll finish this race. And so He knows better than I do. And I want his desires to be mine, and only He can change our hearts. Nobody else can, not even we can. And He has very radically um done that on other desires that I've had in my life, or any kind of bitterness that I felt like I could never get over from things from my past, that I just keep praying every day for my heart. And eventually he softens that. He turns that heart of stone to flesh. So
yeah, you brought up the topic of control, which I think I want to hit on with infertility, quotes infertility, because to me that is one of the biggest aspects, is the absolute lack of control. And I think we all to an extent have some sort of control issues, but I think in my in my opinion our control issues show up in different ways. So I've had to face my control issues with not getting pregnant and literally doing everything I can without getting the result that I want. So I am learning I have no control, but other people learn it through, like a health situation in pregnancy. Some people learn it giving birth to their baby at 25 weeks. Some people learn it through, a birth trauma, and then postpartum, and then parenthood. And so that's the biggest lesson I've learned, is that we all get our own unique journeys on control. It's marriage issues, it's fertility issues, it's birth issues, it's parenthood issues, it's issues with your parents, it's something. But the victimhood of infertility, and what I see with the mainstream look of infertility, is everyone needs to center me because I can't get pregnant, and you need to center me and my burdens and dance around all my triggers because my suffering is more greater than yours, because you don't know what it feels like to not get pregnant. And there's this pedestal of infertility of like, it's this burden that everyone has to bow down to and dance around the triggers, that I don't agree with, because our suffering is all on the same playing field. And I have watched people get pregnant from one time. Then they have the baby, then their marriage breaks and they get a divorce. And I'm like, oh my gosh, getting pregnant fast meant nothing. It means nothing. I've watched people get pregnant so fast, have a baby, and then their health declines in postpartum. And, they have a psychotic break or something, and they're just trying to survive, and they have the baby and they got pregnant fast. But getting pregnant fast and easy literally means nothing in that circumstance. And when you're not getting pregnant, you think getting pregnant easily is the end all be all. And then you have these blinders on to everyone else's struggles and burdens. And you think your struggle is above theirs. And like, I've been humbled in that way, because I've watched all my friends have kids. I've watched all their struggles, and them getting pregnant, like just one time, every single time. I have so many friends that literally means nothing, because they have gotten their control issues, in different ways. They've had their issues of suffering in different ways than mine. And a lot of times we conclude the same thing. Oh, I don't have control. That's usually like the root of postpartum issues, pregnancy issues, marriage issues, anything.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of feel or hear in what you're saying is all of us are under the influence of spiritual warfare, right? I mean, all of us are at the mercy of the enemy's attacks on us for whatever that might look like in our lives. It might be different for a different person, but getting pregnant and having a baby doesn't mean that that person is not going to have all of their other things, their other issues or other challenges or other spiritual warfare they're going to come up against.
Yeah.
Life is not all cupcakes and roses just because of that one thing, is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've just seen that time and time and time again. And I've also seen people I've watched friends like have cancer, get radiation, get pregnant so fast. I've seen people with, the most unhealthy bodies get pregnant fast. And then here I am, Like I prioritize health as my number one thing in life, and I don't get pregnant. And so for me and what I see is I'm like, it's not my body.
Mm.
And that's just my perception because of what I'm seeing in life. Everyone around me has health issues but gets pregnant fast. And I'm like, well, it simply cannot be the body.
Mhm.
I'm like, it just has to be the baby soul is ready. Like, hey, I'm here. Let me in.
Mhm.
So, to go back to your story that you were sharing with um, the first year of trying to get pregnant and your marriage broke apart, and your husband and you came back together. And did you go through years of kind of having children on the back burner after that? Or like, what was the next step in what brought you to your mentality on fertility today?
Yeah, we honestly didn't put it on the back burner just because it didn't happen for years. So we're like, why prevent when nothing's even happened? That was honestly the perspective. But honestly, it's the timing of this podcast is so interesting to me because it's only been this week that things have shifted inside of my body, like in my heart, that for the first time ever, I am being told to pursue other goals. And I had that talk with my husband, and nothing is really changing for him because um, his focus, he's very career focused because he has big aspirations with his career, and he is the breadwinner right now. So his focus is that he's a man, right? And mine is so in the feminine. It's fertility. It's being a mother. It's just very gender. It's very funny. But this week was so pivotal for me because I had to talk with him that for the first time ever, I truly feel that I have to move on. And it doesn't mean giving up, but I'm viewing my life in the perspective of like my baby soul. And I used to be a really hustling girl boss, wedding photographer. I traveled all the time. And then before 2020, I slowed my life down to have a slow life. And I thought I was creating space for a baby. Like, I'm going to slow my life down. I'm going to create my life to invite this baby in. Well, the baby never came. So now I feel like I'm waiting. And it's this week that I realized that I think I have given up on these other goals in my life. Like, I want to write a children's line of books. I want a second summer house. Like, I have these goals that I've just been putting aside, like waiting for this baby. And I'm like looking at my life in the perspective of my baby. And I could just see them being like, why are you giving up on these other things? Why are you waiting for me? Why are you centering me when you could be with your time and energy that you have in your life, with your slow little beautiful life, you could be going after these other amazing things so that maybe if I enter, life will even be more magical. But I have realized that for the past 6 months, I've been waiting and I need to move on and pursue my other goals. And that's been the biggest awakening aha moment. And one of the big goals is something my husband has always wanted, which is more so buying more houses, redoing them, flipping them. And we did that kind of with our house, and we both have that goal. And so it's funny that my heart is actually shifting to his goals and his desires. Like, I've been so baby, baby, baby. And just now recently, I'm like flipping onto his goals and on the same page with him in that aspect. And I find that super fascinating and super amazing. And that's like the latest current shift. And in 1 year, when I listen back to this, who knows where that will lead. But it was a massive week for me.
That's I think that's really great. I think that's um part of the growth process in all of this. like you've said a few times, it's been a long journey that at the beginning you had more of the mainstream paradigm around infertility and it being in pain. And then it's a constant surrender of and learning about control and learning. And the next step is then, you know what the next step is? Stepping into that furnace. The next step is stepping in and just trusting that God is, he's going to move when he's going to move. And it doesn't matter what we're doing or not doing.
And we can't really control it either. Like, I feel different than I did a week ago, and I have no control over that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I kind of hear a lot in Leah of what I've heard in you too, Ray. You know, you've gone through this too, where you've said something very similar to me, in that you just felt, yeah, I need to move on from this, and if this is the Lord's plan, it will be, and I'm going to focus on my boys and my life.
Yeah, that it is what I relate so much to in the conclusions you've come to. That same thing, if you have these other goals you want to meet with your life. And for me, with this secondary infertility struggle, I have children that there was a point in time I was so consumed with the pain of not getting pregnant that I was struggling in motherhood. Like I wasn't being the same mom. I um there's actually a moment that I had with the Lord that I have clung to as my hope, as you said it. Um this was over a year ago, but it was probably about a year of not getting pregnant. So I was in that tantrumy stage real bad. Yeah. Where you get your period and you're like, I hate everything. And every month when my period would come, and of course, back then I tortured myself testing like the days before my period. Um, and I was really wallowing. And I was in a very deep spiritual growth part of my life, like other things going on in my walk with the Lord, the things he was revealing to me. This is what I'm so grateful to, how gracious he is at what he works on, like one at a time, to not, overwhelm us. But in the background is, this pain that I'm feeling and starting to build almost resentment for why he won't give me what I wanted. And every day I would always prioritize taking time to read my Bible. And I had started my period that day and I was like, I'm not going to do it. What's the point? I was really acting like one of my children that I don't want to spend any time with you. You won't give me what I want. I don't want to talk to you. And then I just, the thought came to my mind of reminding myself, you do this whether you feel like it or not. That it doesn't, what the word says does not have to do with how I feel. And it doesn't change based on my feelings. So I was like, ugh, fine. But I was reading in like Ezekiel or something at the time. So I'm like, I need something lighthearted today. It was very like some kind of apocalyptic book I was in at the time. So I'm like, I'm going to go read some Psalms. And the Holy Spirit was just speaking and said, read Psalms of praise. And so I just started flipping through my Bible, and you know how there's headers over the Psalms, and I found a section that they were clearly praises, and I just started reading them. And the more I read them, the more frustrated I got of that resentment of, trying to read and praise the Lord when I'm not feeling like it, when I'm feeling angry, when I'm feeling childish, essentially. And I had the thought, like, this is pointless. And I almost slammed my Bible as I was halfway through one of the Psalms. But then I stopped and I'm like, I'm going to finish it. And the very last verse of that Psalm is Psalm 113. I have it in front of me here. And it is a psalm of praise. He causes the barren woman to dwell in a house, a rejoicing mother of children. Praise the Lord. And in that moment, I just started weeping that he was able to say exactly what I needed to hear. Not that what I took from that is that he's going to fill my house with children. It's that I will be a rejoicing mother. And what it opened up in my mind is that I'm so stuck in this gloom of not getting what I want and infertility that I'm not rejoicing in my life. I'm not rejoicing in the children that I do have. And that's what I want, is to have that joy that only comes from him and to be praising him whatever my circumstances, because he is our source of joy. And that's what I've clung to for now, as I continue on, and I always will, that his promises for us are not all the same, that we all have different life experiences, but he does promise to be our joy when we delight in him. So that was so this was about a year ago. That was really my shift mentally of I need to start moving on. Now I did flounder, for a while. And
you might again.
Yes, yeah. And then about 6 months ago, I started to realize that it just I didn't feel, I wanted to be the best mother I could, and I could tell that something wasn't right in my body. And then he has had me on this path of the people he's placed in my life. An amazing friend of mine who is a holistic registered dietitian, and she's a really strong Christian woman, and she has helped me to get some answers health wise. Of now I've put my focus in on being the best, most joyful woman that I can be, and caring for my temple and honoring this body that the Lord has given me, and being healthy for my children and for my husband that I have now, that I've shifted what my journey's focus is on. And I just feel like I've had that same moment that you had, that it wasn't anything that I chose to change my mind on. It's that I woke up after many, many feelings and emotions and thoughts, and was like, I'm going to choose to walk this path differently now, and to not focus on that so much. And that's kind of what brings me back to that delighting in the Lord, and he gives us the desires of our hearts. Is that's what I feel he's answering that prayer, that it's subtly, but he's answering that prayer of giving me different desires for my heart. And now I want to be healthy, and I want to be joyful. And it's not about, I want a baby and I want it right now.
Yeah, because what's so fascinating is that we do everything in life for a feeling or to get rid of a feeling. We want more peace, or we want to be less angry. We want to suffer less. We want to be more joyful. So everything we do in life is for a feeling or to get rid of a feeling. So when we want something like a baby, what are we actually wanting? We're wanting more joy. We're wanting more happiness. Well, you can actually start that today. And that's another thing I've had to learn. and it's just like, I wanted a baby for more happiness. That's something I can cultivate right now in this minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You know what I'm hearing in this too is I think a lot of times when we go through things that we then go into the medical system for example. In the beginning, it's like, okay, fertility, what's quote wrong? What's wrong? We end up finding the Lord as a result because we go into it and we realize, wait, I don't want to force my body to do something it's not going to do. It doesn't, with medications, I'm not going to do that. And we end up discovering he created this whole big, beautiful world and all of these amazing plants and herbs and fruits and vegetables and animals and all these different things that we can use to fuel or to hinder our bodies, and that all of our bodies are different and every single one functions in a different way. And it's kind of our jobs to learn how to fuel our own temples and to heal our own temples. And how does that work? And that can be such a beautiful uncovering through pain. I know for me, it was through trauma, through birth trauma, that I was able to find this out about the Lord and how just amazing. There's just so many amazing things. I love to talk about red raspberry leaf all the time, or, oh, evening primrose, or all these different things that I've discovered in the more holistic communities, that if I didn't get these doors slammed in my face from the medical community, I probably would still be in that. And I maybe perhaps would not have learned these lessons from the Lord. And I think, Leah, you kind of had a little bit of that too during your journey, right?
Yeah, I think we should move into just like a little bit of the physical component, because obviously there's an aspect of that. Most people
Mm-hmm.
that deal with infertility, they immediately realize, oh my gosh, our world is so toxic. And, my body
Yeah.
is it's not stupid, it's intelligent. And so it's preventing being pregnant for a reason. Whether you were on birth control for 10 years and your body's literally trying to reconfigure itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're
Mm-hmm.
not getting pregnant because it was on, fake hormones for, a
A
decade or
decade.
more.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a lot of people. But for me, actually, I was vegan for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and that couldn't have helped my egg quality. So, yeah.
Where'd you get your protein from?
Ah, I I actually started eating meat because I was trying to hit 80 grams of protein a day, and I couldn't hit it without a protein shake and amino acid powder. Like it's a
Mm,
man-made powder. And then I'm
mhm,
like, I can't hit my protein goals without a man-made powder.
mhm.
Okay, Leah, you don't prioritize anything man-made. So why are you relying on this man-made
Mhm,
powder?
mhm,
Maybe it's time to look at animals. So again, I had a complete mind shift. I had no control over this. My mind when I was vegan was animals are here to just live on this life. It's not for us to eat it. And then my mind shifted to animals are our biggest like blessers. They're blessings. They are here to nourish and feed our body. And I had to have that huge mind perspective. So the vegan thing was a huge topic, and now I'm like full into animal products because I think they're here for us and they're here to support us. And if you can bring a perspective of gratitude for an animal giving its life to nourish your body,
Mhm,
that's amazing.
mhm. Well, there's a biblical precedence for that, right, Ray? I mean, we are told that we can consume animals of this earth, except a few that we probably want to
Yeah.
avoid for toxicity purposes, actually,
Yeah. Yeah. The
like pig.
concept of clean versus unclean, and what God created to be food to nourish us, and um what he describes in Leviticus as unclean is uh, there's specifics of having to do with how they chew the cud and their hooves, but what it breaks down to is pig and shellfish and rabbits and scavengers, things like vultures and things like that. He states in his law that are not meant to be as food. And this is actually the way that I practice and live my life now. Is I wouldn't call what I do kosher. It's eating biblically clean, because the more that I research, the more that I realize that the animals that he says in his word not to eat, there's like pigs, for example, are the most parasitic animal
They're
that
full of
we
parasites.
consume. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And the same with shellfish and things like that. But you're exactly right of what he has given us as food, which he says in Genesis is the beasts of the earth. And there's, proteins and fats that we can only get from there that nourish our cells and our bodies. And he also placed humans as stewards of this earth to steward it in a certain way that honors the animals, and then they honor, or their sacrifice, which literally originally animals were brought to the temple and sacrificed to the Lord because they are giving up their life, and then that meat sacrificed to the Lord was fed to the people. That's how people ate their meat. It's such a My husband actually recently went to a cow slaughter. This sounds kind of um, odd, but he wanted to learn how to humanely slaughter an animal and how it's butchered. He wanted to see it done himself because a lot of us don't have access to that. Like, we could watch videos, but to actually see the animal that you're going to consume die in front of you is a totally different thing. People who homestead and stuff like that, they have a lot of experience with this. But he said that it really gave him an understanding of the immense responsibility that there is in consuming animals. And um it's funny we're talking about this right now, because just as I was on my way home from the grocery store right before we came on here, there was this massive semi truck with cages all on the back, crammed with chickens, like packed in. They couldn't even move. And you could see it. It's like right in front of us. There's not even covered or anything. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm telling my kids, I'm like, do you see that? Like, that is not humane. Of like, this is not how we're meant to consume animals. We are to honor that life. And with their lives, it honors our body. So anyways, I think that is a really interesting revelation that you have had about, especially as women and our hormone health. Consuming meat is huge. There's several accounts I follow on Instagram that talk about this all the time, is that we need it for our like the proper hormone, cycles that we go through throughout the month, that it is crucial to consume animal fats, especially. Whereas our society has told us the complete opposite, that animal fats are bad and we should be consuming low fat and things that do not actually honor our body. And like you said, like man-made things. That was my greatest realization the past several months about my health, is I have been doing this, it's called an autoimmune protocol for autoimmune disease. And it essentially breaks down the diet it's a version of paleo, that all you consume is meat, some vegetables, and fruit. And that is it. And what I've said to Rebecca, especially, I'm going on 3 months of doing it now, but I'm in the reintroduction phase. So now I'm getting to add in nuts and stuff, which is like huge. The fact that I could actually like eat some almonds is like the joy of my life right now. But at the beginning, the first lesson I learned is this is how God created our bodies to function, to live on meat, vegetables, and fruit. All things that had life in them, and they bring life to our bodies. That nothing that I consumed was dead. I mean, it was dead because it was killed and slaughtered and I cooked it. But the point is that there's something.
It wasn't created in a lab, you mean?
Exactly. It wasn't created in a lab. It wasn't processed in a factory. That to take something that grew from sunlight and something else that was living, and to put it into our body, it literally fuels every cell of our body with life.
Yeah. I think the biggest lesson I learned when I was pregnant with Ben. So and Rachel, you went through this too. You had really bad morning sickness, but I had bad morning sickness with Brooke. I had it again with Ben, but it was even worse. I mean, I was throwing up every 20 seconds. It was crazy. I've never experienced anything. I thought I was dying. And at that point was when I had found my holistic doctor, and he said that I probably was deficient in B vitamins. And the only way to get B vitamins is from animals, is from beef liver,
Organ meats.
Some, some people get it from other animals too, but I started taking beef liver capsules and B12 and B6, and guess what? I stopped throwing up. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And I used to be big on just vitamins in general, like supplements, like taking a B vitamin. Like as a vegan, you kind of have to do that.
Sure.
And then my mind had to shift to these vitamins are made in a lab.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is man-made.
And there is a difference too between a capsule vitamin and like a ground up vitamin, or just eating straight up liver, which is gross, but probably what I should be doing.
Yeah, but that's a mind shift too, right?
Yes.
And there
are
are supplements that are whole foods, like there's vitamin C supplements that are made directly from berries versus ascorbic acid.
Sure. Or you could just eat a bunch of oranges.
Exactly.
That was another thing I learned too, is that a lot of times your pregnancy cravings are your body craving certain vitamins.
Yeah.
And I had a crazy citrus craving with Ben. And I know it was because I needed that vitamin C. I was eating 2-3 oranges a day.
Getting it from food first.
Getting it from food is the most important way to get our vitamins. Because all this stuff that you're going to buy from the grocery store, I mean, who knows if there's even any vitamins in it?
It's not regulated.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Vitamins aren't regulated.
Yeah.
The other aspect.
Go ahead.
The other aspect of the physical body with infertility that I wanted to touch on, since we're talking about diet and everything, is what I had to learn about blood sugar regulation. And this is probably the number 2 aspect. The number 1 aspect was fertility awareness method.
That's exactly what I was just going to ask you. I'm glad you're going there. Good.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to touch on these 2 things. First, I'll do blood sugar regulation, because what I had to realize is that your blood sugar, is insulin. Insulin is a hormone, and it is a top tier hormone. Insulin regulates all these other hormones, like your sex hormones. So if you are eating, popcorn, it's going to jack up your blood sugar. Your insulin response is going to go crazy. And because of that bowl of popcorn and your insulin and your blood sugar, it can affect your sex hormones. So what you eat and the order in which you eat food to stabilize your blood sugar has everything to do with hormone health. And that is what I had to learn, because as a vegan, I would wake up and make like an oat banana pancake with maple syrup on it. And that's not the worst thing, right? That's better than a Pop-Tart. But for blood sugar, I was riding blood sugar high, blood sugar low, blood sugar high, blood sugar low, because of consuming straight carbs or sugars. And the way to stabilize blood sugar is eating protein and fat and fiber. So the easiest way to stabilize your blood sugar is to eat every few hours. Bottom line, every 3 to 4 hours, eat. But you need to eat fat, protein, or fiber, or all 3. So on your plate, say you have potatoes, broccoli, and chicken thighs. Eat your broccoli first, that's fiber. Eat your chicken, which is fat and protein, second. Potatoes last. That's going to stabilize your blood sugar. So your insulin is going to be so happy. Then your progesterone is going to be happy. Then your estrogen is going to be happy. Your blood sugar regulation has everything to do with hormone health, because insulin, blood sugar, insulin is a hormone.
I love that you said that. I think that Rachel, you and I have we've talked about this before, just between the 2 of us. So I'm so glad that you shared this on here.
Yeah, I have been learning the exact same thing. I was actually just telling someone this like 2 days ago, that there's actually been even studies that this also can relate to weight loss with women too, that your blood sugar plays a huge role in, like you said, hormones, but also weight loss. So they have studied just people eating the same plate of food in a certain order, like vegetables, protein, and then carb, actually showed a difference in their weight after a month or X amount of time or whatever than people who ate them in other orders. And it all is because of that insulin. So it really is an amazing connection to realize of, again, to go back into what a miracle our bodies are, that they know what our bodies know what they're doing. It's our minds that have been messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. And, our traditional ways that we've been taught lately haven't helped us, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn a different way. It doesn't mean that
Yeah.
we're stuck in the mainstream. I hope that what we're talking about becomes the mainstream, and hopefully the fact that we are talking about it gets more people thinking about it too. And fertility awareness, because that was mentioned earlier. It's something Rachel and I are
Yes.
really passionate about. Rachel was the one who told me, hey, read this book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility, learn about this.
Yeah,
Idea.
We'll link that book in the show notes, because that book, it's
Game
like
changer.
Books I recommend people to read: the Bible, Taking Charge of Your Fertility. Second, it is definitely. So talk to us about that, Leah. Like what you learned about fertility awareness method.
I mean, first of all, I have Taking Charge of Your Fertility, but I also have The Fifth Vital Sign, which is a very similar book. But I prefer the Fifth Vital Sign book by Lisa Hendrickson. She has two last names. Lisa Hendrickson.
I'll add that to the show notes as well.
Yeah, she has the Fertility Friday podcast.
Okay.
I think her book is more relevant in today because she has the latest research on like consuming beef liver. So that's in the book. And blood sugar regulation, that's in the book.
Okay. I love that.
The plastics in our toxic world that mimic estrogen in our body, which then affects our hormone health, that's in this book. So it's like very current, relevant
that's
information.
Great.
Yeah. And a big portion of the book is about tracking your cycle naturally, and then also getting off of birth control. So there's many things with the book, but I think it's absolutely crazy that most of us don't know our body until we want a baby. Or some people still, I have heard from women that the simple fact that cervical fluid is perfectly designed to inhibit sperm when you're not ovulating versus be a sperm highway when you're ovulating. That's the sole purpose of cervical fluid, to inhibit or to help sperm. Women with children don't even know that.
Yeah.
I've encountered many women.
Yeah.
Most women don't, OBs aren't talking about this. They're throwing you on birth control, which is totally going to mess up your cervical fluid anyway. So you may not even notice it.
Yeah. It'll dry you up and you won't have any. And
you won't have any.
Oh,
and then you're like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
This is I've mentioned it to Rebecca. I don't know if you've seen the documentary, The Business of Birth Control.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, it's produced by Ricky Lake, right?
Yeah.
I think, it came out.
And Lisa Hendrickson's in that.
Oh, okay.
And Tori Wishler actually might be. Is that how you say her name? She might be in that too.
I think so. Yes, I think you're right. But I highly recommend that documentary for anyone who hasn't seen. I hope it goes streaming on more platforms soon, because I watched it on their website. But they talk about in the documentary groups of women essentially coming together to offer education, especially in lower income areas, for fertility awareness method. That, like you just said, most women who even have children don't even know about their cervical fluid and what it means. And that is a problem. That is a problem in our society, that every young girl who starts her period should be educated on exactly what is happening in her cycle and when. It's not a matter of whether you want to get pregnant or prevent pregnancy. It's a matter of your health as a woman, that our cycles are a sign of health, and they clue us into a lot. So when I first read Taking Charge of Your Fertility, which was about 5 or 6 years ago, the reason that I read it is for birth control, because my doctor put me back on the pill after I had my first son. And within months, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a disaster. Like it was completely killed my libido. I was angry and emotional. It killed my milk supply that I was already struggling with. So it was just detrimental to my life. And I said to my husband after a few months, like, I'm not taking this anymore. It was literally like I was awakened to the system just based on trusting my body, and that how I felt wasn't right. And he's like, well, what are we going to do? Because we don't want another baby. I wish I could go back in time and tell us, like, stop caring so much. That's what I would have said if I knew then what I know now. But instead, I'm like, I'll figure something out. And I don't even remember who recommended that book or how I came upon it, but I read that book, ate it up like a science textbook, and I felt like I had eyes open for the first time of what my body was and what it was doing, and that it then became a health marker for me. And so to then, be where I am now today, that's part of what gave me the confidence of being in a fertility doctor's office and him saying, like, I could put you on this drug, even though it looks like you're ovulating. Me being like, why don't you look at my chart here? Because I have all of this crucial information for my cycle. And he didn't even want to see it.
Yeah,
And
let's
then
say
I'm
what
like,
a chart is. Let's say what a chart is.
yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So go
Who
ahead.
wants to take that?
Yeah. You explain it, Lea.
So fertility awareness method is a non-hormonal birth control. It can be a non-hormonal birth control because you can use it to prevent pregnancy, but you can also use it to achieve pregnancy. So it can be used for either or. And it's simply using the body's fertility signs, which is cervical fluid, the position of your cervix, or taking your basal body temperature every single morning before you get out of bed, before you have a drink of water. It's your body temperature the minute you wake up. Mm-hmm. Then you chart that temperature throughout the month, every day of the whole month, and it creates a chart. It creates a graph which reflects your hormones. So before you ovulate, your temperatures will be lower, and then after you ovulate, you will have a dramatic rise in your temperature. And this is how you can actually absolutely confirm that you ovulated or that you didn't. Some people don't ovulate, and their temperature chart will reflect that. Yes. So you can tell how your thyroid is doing, how your estrogen is doing, how your progesterone is doing based on these temperatures.
Yeah.
It is mind-blowingly
amazing. It really is. Yeah. And that is why those of us who feel passionate about fertility awareness method are passionate about education for women, because I find it so empowering to know what's going on in my body. And it really is a health marker for not just when I can get pregnant and when I can't. It is, I'm feeling really crappy today and I'm not close to my period. Why am I feeling this way? And I can look at my chart, see where I am in my cycle, and realize that I'm, this many days out from ovulation, and certain hormones are being released that get the egg to release, and that they were affecting my brain in a certain way because my hormones were out of balance. So it is actually an incredible tool for mental health and physical health, and just this window into our hormones, which run the whole show. Our hormones are running all the functions in our body and greatly contribute to our mental health. And I think that it's just so important for more women to know and to do their own research on, because there's so many issues and side effects with hormonal birth control pills as we know. But one thing that we can see in the numbers is the rise in antidepressants as you're put on hormonal birth control pills. And I know that as something that I experienced as well. And it's just very sad because our bodies are trying to tell us something, and that there is
Yeah.
something wrong with our hormones. And so when we can have that whole picture and that window into our health, and then take the steps that we need to take to get things back into balance, because our bodies are in a constant state of healing. Everything we do, we're either feeding disease or we're feeding healing. So just to have the parameters, as you laid out, that fertility awareness helps us to see it could be game changing. And it was for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you set me on this path too, like I said, right before we had Brooke. And it was such a learning opportunity about how our bodies work and how the female body functions. One thing I want to put out there too is just to kind of tie this into this conversation about fertility. Just because we understand how our fertility works doesn't mean that we can always use it to our benefit either, because sometimes God has other plans, right?
Yeah.
That was something that
Yeah.
I ran into a couple of my girlfriends who I shared this with them, and they used this and they said, this isn't working. And there's can be other things that are at play, right? It could be a hormonal thing. It could be a spiritual thing. It could be all of the things. The whole point I think the whole point in it though is that we're learning about God's creation by doing this. Oh, man.
And and to me, the point is you can use fertility awareness method if you're not getting pregnant as a means to control, to get the thing you want. But the most important aspect of fertility awareness method is learning your body and getting in connection with your body. That's to me is the whole point. And again, this was a powerful week for me because I realized that I'm going to stop tracking my temperature. I'm going to stop tracking my fertility because I've been tracking it for more than a year and my charts are perfect. There's nothing there. And so I'm going to stop tracking because I've learned everything I need to learn. I am so deeply connected to my body. It served its purpose. And I'm going to just relax on not needing to know the day I ovulate. I'm going to just take a step back and be like, my mind doesn't need to know the day. I know I'm fertile. I have this beautiful chart. My cervical fluid is perfect. All the things. I'm good.
Yeah, I definitely have been there, of the point of letting go of that. And it can be difficult because, like you said, it's this amazing tool that gives us insights into our bodies, but we can start obsessing over it, and that, taking it too far. Or maybe not too far, but just putting too much focus on it when you know that like you said, you have the information you need to have. And so to kind of just like close that chapter of the book and move on to the next chapter of letting go and let God.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a really cheesy saying, but
and it's going to be interesting because I'm in tune with my symptoms, and sometimes I can feel when I'm ovulating, so I'm going to probably still know because I'm connected to my body.
Absolutely.
But I don't need the data anymore because it served its purpose. I know I'm healthy. I know my hormones are great.
Absolutely.
Served its purpose.
Used it as a learning opportunity, and now you're in tune, and now you don't need to track. I totally relate to that. Lea, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today and for really sharing your heart with us today. Was there anything else that you wanted to leave listeners with?
No, I'm so happy that we spent the majority portion on the emotional, spiritual component, because that's what's missing in almost all of these conversations typically. And then, the little bit of the physical is, it's always relevant, but everyone's journey is different. Some might be just physical, but I kind of would question that. I think there's always, God is using it to get you to a higher ground.
Mhm.
And whether you
Yeah.
want to take that opportunity, if you don't want to go to a higher ground, that's up to you. That's your
Mhm.
free will.
Mhm.
I know how I live my life. I don't want to be in victimhood. I want to be in survivor mentality of how is this for me and how can I grow from it?
Mhm.
And that's what I value in life, and that's how I live my life. And especially not living in fear. So not living in fear of not getting what I want, and not living in fear is a thing I value in my life.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. How can people find you if they want to say hi or say thank you for sharing your story? Or
Yeah.
do you want people to find you?
They can find me. I mean, people could probably find me even if I don't say my Instagram handle, because there's skills out there. No, on Instagram, I'm at Vienna Glenn. That was my
Okay.
photography business name, even though my
Okay.
name is Lea.
Mhm.
But I do have my own podcast, which is Wise Women Diaries, which I
Perfect.
just solo podcast because I deep dive into all these topics. I just talk into my phone and have conversations with myself, and I really ebb and flow with it. I use my feminine intuition on when I want to talk about something. I don't have like a rigid schedule with it,
Mhm.
but
Okay.
that's where I am.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank
This is
you.
great.
Yeah. And thank you for listening today and for being on this journey with us. If you'd like to follow along outside the podcast, you can join the mission on Instagram at The Radiant Mission. And as a reminder, we will have the video version available to watch on YouTube. Simply search Radiant Mission on YouTube, or better yet, if you go to theradiantmission.com and subscribe to our blog, you will get reminders when new episodes come out, and it will include the YouTube video right there for you. And I'd like to close us with Psalm 27:14. Wait for the Lord, be strong and let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for the Lord. Wishing you a radiant week.